guys, I'm Dr. Kim Sage, and this is the third video in my series, my journaling series I'm working on, hopefully with you guys, on healing shame in complex PTSD. As I've said in many videos, I truly believe that the core wound of having a BPD, NPD parent, or similar, what we often call toxic parent, but what really is a wounded parent, often creates a deep well of shame in us that creates this go-to belief that we are bad, that we're not worthy, that everything is our fault, and that we don't deserve love, or love cannot be trusted at the core because people aren't safe, and I am defective in some way because if my primary caregiver couldn't love me, couldn't protect me, wasn't safe, didn't think I was amazing, then who else in the world will ever do so? So at the end of this, you'll have 2 journal prompts or journal exercises to add to the journal I just showed you on this video, where we talked about how to build your first page, which is how to create your sort of connection to your dream self using art or words or writing some form of something, quotes, things like that. And then the second page being a connection to your inner child, to the positive parts of your inner child, the whole pure self that makes you, you. And if you want to go back and watch that video, you can do that. I want to dive a little deeper today into shame at its core, especially when it comes to CPTSD. And here's why. As I was rewatching Brené Brown, most of you know Brené Brown, she's just an incredible human all the way around. And her TED Talks on shame and vulnerability are at the highest, rates of all of those videos seen in the TED Talk world. And they are extremely incredible. And I can't recommend them enough, not to mention her Netflix special and every book she's ever written and everything she's basically ever said. I think she's amazing. But I think that as I was watching it, it hit me that, okay, so if Brené Brown is saying that, shame is universal, and most of us have some, triggers around, these certain areas like appearance and money and success and family and parenting and marriages. What about people who actually already had a childhood where they were told by their caregivers that they were defective, that they were unlovable, that they weren't worthy, they were called names, they were raged at, they were neglected, made to feel less than? It's one thing to talk about, okay, the whole planet has it, and at least some portion of those had more attuned parents who were more secure. But what about the rest of us who didn't get that? How much harder is it going to be for us to heal shame? And the other problem with that is that if vulnerability and shame are connected, in a complex childhood, vulnerability is not usually modeled, it's not safe, and in fact, it could put you at risk. And so how do you even do vulnerability when you were so busy protecting yourself and trying to sort of survive? And if connection and self-compassion, as Brené talks about, are the antidotes to shame, but in your childhood, there was no safety or protection, even if it was just emotionally not safe, let alone physically not safe or otherwise, or mentally not safe, how do you even begin to not only get rid of those messages or at least turn the volume down on I'm not worthy, I'm bad? How do you even think about talking to yourself with loving kindness? How do you think about trusting anyone else to truly come into your world when you don't know how to do that? When connection didn't exist, and when it should have existed, it was dangerous or unsafe or chronically wounding. And how many of you are walking around still struggling with your BPD moms, your NPD moms, and moms and dads who have these wounds? And as I keep saying, I know that these parents often suffer the same things. And I have great compassion for those of you who struggle. And I hope if you're watching this video, you know that it also applies to you, because I know you are carrying shame too. But at the core, we have to all have some compassion and a place to begin to look at where these wounds come from, how to begin to heal them, because I really don't think we can have the life we want unless we at least learn to reduce the sound of that childish, wounding voice that says, you don't matter, you're not good enough, you never will be, and you're actually kind of a bad person and things are your fault. And as I just said, especially if a parent actually told you those things, which a lot of, as I use the word toxic, is really wounded parents actually do and say, or they demonstrate by their behaviors. And so I think that makes it really complicated. How do we climb out of that? I think it depends on, your gender. We know that men get told don't be weak and then often get punished for doing so or shamed for doing so. Women get told to be everything to everyone at all times. And sure, you can be vulnerable about it, but that doesn't change the expectation. You still need to do it with a smile on your face and dinner on the table. And so I think those roles are changing, but at the core, it is a deeply cultural problem we all have. And so I keep thinking about how much harder it is, though, when you're already struggling with all the things we talk about with CPTSD, which are, dealing with your own childhood through dissociation, through becoming a perfectionist, through not trusting people, and maybe it being hard for you to let your walls down, right? How do we heal it? So I hope this series will help you do that. And I really do hope that you'll feel free to share and post. I really do want to create, one of my hopes is to create an actual course really deep into the dive of what do you do, how do you heal and deal with a BPD or NPD parent, specifically for those of us who had these kind of parents, many of who are still deeply in their relationships, even if they're not speaking to them, if they're still in the wound. And I do think that we don't talk enough about this. My therapist and I were discussing the other day that we talk about borderline. There's a Borderline in Mom's book. There's a few books about it, but we don't really talk about, I don't think, enough outside of therapy, what it really feels like, especially when it's the mother, but really whoever took that motherly role, could be male or female, grandparent, auntie, whatever, as I always say. But when that person who is supposed to be your person has been so deeply wounding, how much we carry that shame throughout our lives. And so that's what we're going to talk about in this journal and this series. And I want to give you just a quick example of why I think it's so important. As a psychologist, we're basically trained not to share too much with our patients. And I would say most of my patients don't know that much. They know a few things. They know I have 4 kids. They know, a little bit here and there. And if I think it's appropriate, I might share a little bit. But for the most part, I don't share my stories. And yet, living this many years, I have some good stories. And maybe someday I'll write a book about those because they do actually relate to a lot of the topics, no surprise, on my channel. But an example of the shame we carry and how it goes back to our childhood is that, I'm going to try to make the story short, but I had some girlfriends, some very close girlfriends many, many, many years ago. My new mommy friends, the ones you make when your kids are first born. And I thought this was a very tight, loving relationship. And as I reflect on it now, I can see there were things about it that I didn't set good boundaries around, that I allowed. No surprise there because of my own childhood. But after a great, massive loss and struggle in my life, when I kind of lost everything, and I was raising 4 young babies-ish, I went to visit this friend who had really always been successful, but they had really become successful, and I had pretty much lost everything. So that in and of itself was my trigger, but it was there. But I went to make dinner one night for all of us, and I bought chicken that was not organic because I was going to make enchiladas, or she was going to make enchiladas, and there was no organic chicken that was bone in. And frankly, I didn't even think about buying organic chicken because at that point in my life, I couldn't really afford it. And I hadn't even really, it had been so many years since I had thought I have to have it. I was so happy to bring back the chicken to make dinner, and my friend refused to eat it. She said, I can't eat this. It's not organic. And our kids were starving. There were a bunch of them. She refused to eat it and drove to the store at dinner time. I was a long way to the store because they had money and lived away from the grocery store. And I was humiliated and so ashamed at that moment because I felt like a rejection of me. And now I think I would handle it differently. This was a long time ago. But the truth is that it triggered all of my own childhood issues around money and family and being successful and not having enough, and my loss of the family that I thought was going to heal my childhood. And in some ways it did, and in some ways the loss made it worse. And so my shame spiral went, wasn't about the fact that I didn't have the chicken. It was that not having that chicken that she rejected triggered all of the failures and losses in my life in those moments. And I got up and left early the next day with my kids to go to the airport because I couldn't confront it. I couldn't deal with it. I didn't have the skills back then to confront it the way I might today. And I know this seems like a dumb story, but the truth is that this person had eaten In-N-Out Burger 2 days before. It wasn't like she could never eat, she ate out all the time. It just felt like such a rejection. Now today I know that it had nothing to do with me. It had to do with her. But in that moment, that rejection triggered my own wounds in such a massive way of the loss of my childhood issues, the losses I had endured in those years when I thought my friend would have known better but didn't. And that is why I say that even though I was, in my 40s thinking that I was, getting my life together, we can be transported in these moments back to that childhood that I am bad, I'm worthless, I'm a failure. And it's really hard to see that it, oftentimes has nothing to do with us. And that is what I hope this series helps you do. So feel free to share your shame stories. I have a lot more. I was trying to find one that I feel safe enough sharing and that isn't too personal in some regards. But it really was hurtful, and it really did trigger old wounds. And in a world where people don't have enough to eat, it seems stupid to even share it. But I'm just saying that that's where I went with it. And it did go back to a childhood of my own that really wasn't such a great, easy childhood. So anyway, back to our journal as an example. That's why I think it's so important. So for today's journal, what I would hope that you might do if you're going to do it with me is identify on the third page. So here's the first page, the inner card cover, which is connecting to your dream healed self. As I said, go back to this video. This page is your healing your inner child, connection to inner child. And today's page is really about what do I need to release and your shame triggers, your positive and negative cognitions. So what I put here is these things make me feel bad, unworthy, unlovable. My shame triggers I wrote here. And I just put parenting because if I don't do well at parenting, that's a trigger for me. And then I'll fill that in with more. And then statements, for example, that I think that we feel and that clients will share is everything is always my fault. I am bad and that is why bad things happen. I don't deserve love. Too much love is scary and lonely. And so think about what your statements might be. They're often some version of this I've found, but you want to list the negative thoughts and beliefs you have about yourself when you go to that shame-filled place, and you want to identify what are the things that tend to take me there. And they are things, of course, like, our appearance, our weight, our aging, our mental and physical health, our homes, our jobs. You figure out what yours are, but it's really important to get clear on what those are so that when you find yourself in that shame spiral, you know how to recognize the negative statements or beliefs that even if they're just floating in your unconscious, that they're there. And then the next page will be connecting to the positive statements, the ones we want to actually turn into in a positive way when we feel that. So at the bottom, I wrote, you can write some version of this, whenever I realize that I am thinking or feeling these things, these negative statements, I will lovingly say to myself, which self-compassion can be hard when you have a certain kind of childhood, right? I will lovingly say these things. And this is my positive thoughts or beliefs. And so some examples would be, I am worthy of love. I am a good and loving person. I deserve goodness in my life. I can trust myself. I did my best and that is enough. Good enough is good enough. That's a big one for us perfectionists. I was not to blame for my childhood. Children are not responsible for a parent's love, success, happiness, pain, or loss. And that's a really important one because if we're carrying shame of our own, we're often carrying our parents' shame too, and the things they said to us and did to us as a result of their unhealed shame and wounds. And because shame is generationally transmitted down, I believe, the path, it's really important to try to do the work now to help you not have your children or your loved ones, or even just you, carry it further. And the last one is really important, which kind of circles back to this whole thing, which is I am a survivor and you are a survivor if you've gotten through something like a childhood that you are not able to be just a child in and be safe and free. I am strong, but it's okay to also be vulnerable and let people into my heart and world. And that is even what this channel is about. I'm not sure I could have done this even 10 years ago. But the core of this is, as I was saying in the beginning, if you had a certain kind of childhood, like a complex childhood, vulnerability and shame hold hands, and you're not going to want to do vulnerability even more so than the average person. And connection and all of those things and self-compassion are going to be more difficult. So we have to start this journal journey identifying what those negatives are and quickly learning how to, at least when we can, pull ourselves back into the positive, loving self-beliefs we want to replace. I want to replace I am bad with I am good and loving. We want to replace I'm not worthy with I am worthy. I deserve love. We want to replace I am unlovable with I am lovable. I have much to offer people in the world. I have much to give, or whatever those things are. And really connect to that. Those thoughts you had about your childhood that are your fault are not your fault. You are not responsible then, and you're not responsible now. But you are responsible for what you can do for yourself today. And I know I always say it, but we always have to hold like what happened to us and all the crappy things with how we're accountable today to be better and do better. And as Oprah and Maya Angelou say, you cannot do better until you know better. And so I hope this will help you know better in some way. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll stick around for the next video, which actually I think, let me just see it. The next one will be, the next video will be identifying safe places and self-compassion, because as we go deeper into these journal prompts, I'm going to keep posting journal prompts and discussing the topics. I want you to have the tools up front, right? Inner child, positive tools, a way to ground yourself and be safe, because we're going to talk about dissociation, perfectionism, emotional triggers, inner critic, all those ways we can keep ourselves in that CPTSD wound, and hopefully wrap it all up with some reparenting. And as I said before, hopefully I really do want to create even deeper dives into materials and learning. It's hard to find the time, but I really care so much about sharing this stuff. And I do believe that our stories, our pain, they really can be our power. And I know that's true for me. And so I hope it'll be helpful for you. So thanks for watching. Please stay safe and well. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell, and that way you get notified when I post new videos. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye, guys.